My husband and I were madly in love when we got married. Usually, the honeymoon phase of marriage doesn't last for so long, but ours went from bliss to bliss. Everything was sweet and lovely until I got pregnant. Then pregnancy took a toll on me physically. The first trimester was the worst. Morning sickness, vomiting, and other sicknesses became a part of my life. Feture or benti to joys. When I got to my second trimester, things got better health-wise, but something about my marriage changed. Nothing was the same. The joy, the laughter, and the intimacy. No matter what I did, my husband wouldn't touch me. He started treating me like I was made of eggshells, and he could break me just by desiring me. Sometimes I would try to look as sexy for him. At post, I had a visible baby bump, but I tried to spice things up just to get his attention and possibly seduce him. All I got for my effort were excuses.
I have been stressed at work lately, so I won't be at my best. Let's watch a movie tonight. Oh dear, I have a terrible headache. Let's cuddle instead.
Summary to the few times I got him to touch me, it felt like I had forced him. Everything felt like he was performing a chore he despised. This affected the way I saw myself. I felt I was no longer the woman he desired. Instead of enjoying my pregnancy journey, I couldn't wait for it to be over. It is by God's grace, I delivered a healthy baby with no complications. I took my postpartum care seriously, and in due time, I recovered what I lost during pregnancy. My body felt ready to be loved and cherished by my husband. I started trying to let my husband know I was ready, but he wouldn't even look at me, let alone notice my efforts. He always found ways to turn down my advances. He spent a lot of time out at the house, leaving me alone with the baby. Sometimes I would overhear him chatting and laughing on his phone, but he would frown the moment I got close to him. He kept locks on his phone. Keeping passwords was something we both never did. I started feeling ugly. I hated myself because of the way he looked at me. There was no desire in his eyes. If anything, he looked at me with scorn than with desire. I stopped looking into the mirror. I cried often and lost appetite. This affected the production of breast milk, hence affecting the baby too. One day I was walking in town, lost in thought, when I heard a car honk followed by a screeching sound of a vehicle pulling a quick brake. I got startled and sat on the floor, though the car did not hit me. I nearly got hit by a car because I was thinking about my marriage going down the drain. My eyes got blurred with tears and I started crying. The driver of the car that almost hit me came out of the car and helped me to my feet. He spoke to me for what felt like a long while. I couldn't hear most of what he was saying, but I remember feeling comforted. When I stopped crying, he asked, "Where are you going?" "Let me drop you off." The kids on the way, he asked me what happened. "Why were you so upset?" Sometimes it is easier to open up to strangers than it is to talk to people you know. I spilled everything to him from start to finish. I didn't hold back. He didn't say much. He just listened to my story. That was all I needed at that moment, someone to listen to me. Before I got down, we exchanged contacts and promised to keep in touch. We talked from time to time. From what he told me, he's 3 years older than me and had never been lucky with love. He was single, so he gave me his full attention. He took me to lunch and bought me gifts. The attention made me feel good. And by then, our baby was over a year old, and yet my husband wouldn't even throw a look my way. My new friend, on the other hand, looked at me like I was a unicorn. I felt seen, loved actually, and beautiful. The first time I visited him was memorable. We ended up having sex, and it was the best I've ever had. Some days I spent the whole night with him, with my baby next to me. He treated me and my baby very well, as if we were his own. I was going through all this phase of life, and my husband still didn't notice. How could he see? He wasn't looking at me. I decided to ask for a divorce, because what's it worth if you have a husband who treats you like you don't exist? But something changed. I don't know what, but all of a sudden, my husband started noticing me and how I was glowing. Maybe the reality began to dawn on him when he realized that I was no longer demanding his attention. I dressed nicely. I looked my best every day, but not for him. He came to his senses and started noticing me. He tried getting to me, but I ignored him just like he ignored me. One day, I came home from my boyfriend's place to pack my bags. That was when he saw that I wasn't joking about the divorce. He begged and apologized for his neglect. "Please don't do that. I'm sorry. I've been foolish, but trust me, we will work things out," he pleaded. I didn't want to hear a word of his plea. He kept begging, "Have you forgotten our marriage vows?" Especially the part that said, "Till death do us part." I parry lamented every bit of it. Don't give up on us. I still walked out on him to enjoy my newfound happiness while he kept sending his heartfelt messages. While he kept sending his family to talk to me, I was living in bliss and having the happiest moment of my life, and I wasn't about to give it up to live with my soon-to-be ex-husband. After my divorce was finalized, our plan was for me and my boyfriend to get married in a few months. 3 months passed, and he didn't mention anything about marriage. I reminded my boyfriend about the marriage, but he kept saying that he didn't have money to plan a wedding at the time. Like the following month, I got an invitation card that my husband was remarrying. I felt sad because I was hoping that I would get married before him. After 5 months of being with my boyfriend, it was clear to me that he was not serious about getting married. There was a friction in our relationship. He complained that I was being too pushy and that all I cared about was getting married. I gave him space and didn't want to push things. Few weeks later, I went to drop off my son at my husband's place, and I found out that his new wife was pregnant. I saw how they treated each other, and for the first time, I felt jealous and wondered why he never treated me like that. Perhaps if he paid attention to me like that, I wouldn't have divorced him. Peter, maybe divorcing him taught him a lesson on how to treat a woman, but sadly, another woman is reaping the reward. I went home that night, and I had a serious argument with my boyfriend. I accused him of causing me to divorce my husband and falsely promising me that we would get married. Out of anger, he told me that he could never get married to a single mom. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He later apologized to me, but the damage had already been done. Our 7-month honeymoon didn't last. A few weeks later, I found out that he was having an affair with a married woman. I felt like I was used, and I should have stayed with my ex-husband. We had a big argument, and he wanted me and my son to move out of his house. I didn't know what to do or who to call, so I called my ex-husband. My ex-husband suggested that we move in with him and his wife, so we can make sure his son is safe until we find a place to stay. His wife was kind enough to allow me to stay at their place for a week before he rented a place for me and my son. I am still young and I still look good, so hopefully the right man would come along someday. This gives a new meaning to the saying that women are the gatekeepers of sex and men are the gatekeepers of relationships. She left her husband, who is committed to protecting her and their child, for a guy that made her feel good and may commit to her. All because she wanted to feel good at that moment. Her inability to comprehend the consequences of her decision on her and her child is remarkable. She's trying to rationalize her infidelity by blaming her husband for not giving her enough sex with no consideration for her child. She's a terrible mother for having sex with her son nearby. She's very selfish and not a wife material. Maybe her husband is stressed with work and needs a shoulder rub, someone to ask him how his day was going. But no, it's me time now. Me. At the first sign of trouble, she tucked tail and ran. Piston said she left after she had the best sex of her life. That's just a sign of a shallow person. Sex and attention are the most important things to her, and it's sad because most modern women can't wait to get married because they see that their friends are getting married. They do not understand the institution of marriage. That is why nearly 70% of divorces are initiated by women. 2/3 of all divorces are initiated by women. For among college-educated women, that number jumps to up to 90%. Another way to look at it is that she might probably be suffering from depression, and it affected the way she saw herself. All she was looking for is attention and someone to listen to her, which is a sign of somebody with low self-esteem. This is the reason why you have friends. You need to talk to people, and sometimes your partner is not emotionally available to speak because maybe he's facing his own issues. Because sometimes men tend to hold it in and don't feel like sharing what they have in the inside. So this is an opportunity for her to speak to a therapist. But instead, she attributed all sorts of negativity towards her husband, thereby allowing herself to be vulnerable to a player who satisfied 3 out of 4 essential needs of a woman, which are materialistic, emotional, physical, and companionship. Now, a materialistic aspect is that he bought her a lot of good things, which is the materialistic aspect. And the emotional aspect is that he listens to her. And then the physical aspect is one of the reasons why she left him, which is she had the best sex of her life. And then the for which he wasn't willing to give, which is the one that men have control of, is the companionship. In other words, the marriage, and he refused to give it to her, which is something that she was getting from her husband already. The most important of all those is the companionship. In other words, the marriage, which she already had with her husband. So she downgraded herself from a wife to a side chick. Just so we don't forget, the reason why women want companionship is because they need that extra security blanket for themselves and the children or the child. She just met this guy, and he hasn't been with her for long, so he only knows her good side and not her bad, said. Let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt by saying that maybe he intended to marry her, but after he stayed with her long enough, he found out who she really is, so he changed his mind. What she should have done was first look introspectively. Maybe she could lose weight, cook for him, give him a shoulder rub, add a little foreplay, and not nag him so much. Most women do not think about how divorce affects the children. Maybe she should have tried marriage counseling. If the only problem is sex and attention, then divorce shouldn't be the first resort. Instead of working on herself, she blamed her husband. See, come to find out, the guy she left her husband for didn't want to put up with her nonsense as well.